Welcome back here with us on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. Let's now focus on what's happening as far as India's fight against COVID pandemic is concerned. The Drugs Controller General of India today granted permission to Bharat Biotech, the makers of Covaxin, to start conducting phase 3 trials for its intranasal coronavirus vaccine, which is BBV 154. Now, the trials will be conducted now, and they are going to evaluate the nasal vaccine for both the 2-dose primary schedule and also to use as booster dose schedule. An intranasal vaccine would not only be simple to administer but to also reduce the use of needles and syringes, and can be very, very important for India's vaccination drive. And to understand more about this particular vaccine, we are joined by Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, Chairperson, Center of Social Medicine and Community Health, JNU, and member of National COVID Task Force. We are also joined by Dr. Chandrakant Laheria, Vaccine and Public Policy and Health Systems expert. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us here on Urban Debate this evening. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, for the benefit of our viewers, can you tell us a little bit about this particular vaccine that has got the approval today for phase 3 trials? What exactly has been the result of the 2 phases so far, and what can be expected from this?
Thank you. As you said, the BBV 154, it is a novel adenovirus vectored intranasal vaccine. So essentially, it's administered to the nasal cavity. It's both likely to prevent infection and transmission, as well as likely to prevent disease. That's one of the potential USPs of this vaccine. The important issue is that the nasal route has excellent potential for vaccination because the nasal mucosa is an organized immune system. And then the obvious advantages of this being needle-free, that this does not require skilled or very highly trained healthcare workers, and the entire spectrum of needle-associated injuries and infections, those will be eliminated. Also, it would be highly suited for both children and adults, and a very high degree of adherence is expected. And the other big thing, and that's the big picture in terms of vaccine equity, both in the country as well as globally, is that its manufacturing is at least now being understood to be highly scalable, and it could contribute significantly to meeting the demand, the global demand for vaccines.
Okay. Now, Mr. Laheria, what is your opinion, Dr. Laheria, on the new vaccine for which the phase 3 trials are going to begin? It's going to be, I believe, the first vaccine that will be intranasal.
Thank you. In addition to whatever Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta has said, there are a few advantages of nasal vaccines. And one additional advantage is that we know that SARS-CoV-2 multiply in a nasopharynx or the back of the nose and throat. So in the mucosa of nose and throat. So if we have nasal vaccine, which essentially means that mucosal immunity can help in reducing the viral load at the site, and which essentially would also mean that the risk of transmission can be reduced. So nasal vaccines are likely to have an impact on reducing the transmission of virus in the community. Unlike the current vaccine, which are known to prevent severe disease, hospitalization, and death, and limited role in reducing transmission. So that is going to be one distinct advantage. Of course, we know many other advantages, especially when we know that risk of disease is low in children. Therefore, administering nasal vaccine in children can help in reducing the transmission they can bring to the home. So it will definitely have distinct advantage. As far as the number of nasal vaccines are being undergoing clinical trials, so there are a few candidate vaccines across the world which are being explored at different stages of clinical trial. But in India, this is the vaccine which is at advanced stage. So this is definitely good news. And other part is that, of course, we have around 36 vaccines which are authorized or licensed by at least one national regulatory authority across the world. But those number of vaccines are still not enough. We know that there are a number of countries which do not have access to these vaccines. We also know that in the near future there would be need for booster dose, at least for select population, if not all population. So world need more vaccines, a different variety of vaccines, and vaccines which can reduce transmission. So in that sense, it's a good news. Phase 3 trial and the booster dose as part of this trial will provide some useful insight which will prepare us for the future.
Okay, Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, usually how much time does it take for, the phase 3 trial to get over for a vaccine of this sort? What can you tell us, from the experience of how the clinical trials of a similar vaccine is going on in different parts of the world, as Dr. Laheriya was talking about?
To the best of our understanding, this is going to happen across 9 centers in the country. The phase 1 was 4 or 5 centers. The phase 1 responses have been good in terms of safety, immunogenicity. And this trial, the phase 3 trials are typically for the benefit of the viewers. These will entail large numbers of participants, around 30,000 or so. I don't know the exact number that this one would entail, and therefore this is certainly going to take several months at that scale, and then those results to be scrutinized, and then a final go ahead given. But the potential advantage that this has is that once it receives the green signal, this is certainly likely to get rapidly manufactured, and therefore, as Dr. Laheriya was explaining, this would be a valuable tool, not just for primary immunization, but also for boosters. Also, like the Covaxin, also from the same company, this 2-dose vaccine schedule is also 28 days. That's 4 weeks apart.
Right. But what will be very important is that this will be able to help reduce transmission, as well, as both of you told us. Gentlemen, stay on with us. There's another important aspect of the COVID pandemic that we want to highlight for our viewers, and that is the spike in cases in the state of Kerala that we are now witnessing. A look at the case count registered in Kerala in the last 1 week will give you a picture of how cases have been increasing in the state. In the last 24 hours, the state has recorded 54,537 cases. Positivity rate in the state is now at 47.05% as compared to the positivity rate in the country, which is about 16%. So that's the kind of difference that we're talking about from the country as compared to what's happening in Kerala. So what is causing this spike in Kerala? Let's try and understand from our guests who continue to be with us, Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, as well as Dr. Chandrakant Laheriya. Dr. Laheriya, we saw this trend during the second wave also, actually towards the end of the second wave, that while the case count and the positivity rate in the country had started coming down, in the worst hit states had started coming down, for Kerala, it was going up. Why?
So we need to remember that test positivity rate is function of how easily the testing capacity is available for individual. And second, it is also dependent upon the strategy which is adopted by various states. So we know that Indian government has revised the strategy to conduct COVID-19 testing, and as per this new policy, government say that the only like asymptomatic individual in community setting or even the contacts of confirmed case need not to be tested. So if a state goes for a targeted testing of high-risk individual or symptomatic individual only, it's very likely that the positivity rate would be high. And what I know about Kerala, that in Kerala, it is mostly the symptomatic individual who are being tested. The targeted testing is resulting in the increased test positivity rate. Other part is that we also need to remember that since the testing strategy has changed, so the TPR, test positivity rate of this wave, is not comparable with the previous wave. We always knew that in the previous wave we were talking about less than 5% test positivity rate, but in this wave across the country 16% itself is very high. Many of the districts and states are reporting 40%, 45%, 50%. It simply shows the easy access to testing and also targeted testing. It is not a reason to be worried. Rather, we are hearing from epidemiologists, public health experts, and even policymakers have started talking about it, that in this ongoing wave, the daily new COVID-19 cases as well as the test positivity rate are not the criteria which we should be looking at. we should be looking at hospital admission rate due to COVID-19 and also ICU admission rate due to COVID-19. So clearly, we need to look at the comprehensive set of parameters rather than one parameter.
Okay. Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, are you concerned about the kind of spike in case count and the positivity rate that we are witnessing in Kerala? The trend to me, sir, looks very similar to what happened during the second wave.
No, I think Dr. Laharia has described it very eloquently and accurately. This 47%, which is a daily test positivity rate, is for the Omicron. It doesn't really hold the full value. Looking back at the South African experience, for 4 weeks of December, the weekly average test positivity rate was around 25% across all its provinces, irrespective of the number of new cases that happened. So in terms of weekly test positivity rate, I suppose this would translate to something between 25 and 30%. Kerala, also remember, is largely urban as well as peri-urban. It's almost a continuum there. So in South Africa, again, the higher the urbanization of the provinces, higher have been the peaks. But the test positivity rate remained, as I said, around 25 to 30%. So this shouldn't be a matter of worry. But again, to reinforce what Dr. Laharia said, the thing to watch out for is hospitalization, is what's happening to the more serious cases. Are there more complications or deaths? As long as that's not a concern, the situation should be deemed to be under control.
Okay. Dr. Laharia, last question before we let you go. You said that, there's targeted testing that's happening in Kerala. So then we're given to understand that people who are asymptomatic, the contacts of a positive person who are asymptomatic are not getting tested as per the recent testing guideline of the center. So in that case also, if you see the case count, it's slightly higher, isn't it?
So we have to remember that even during the second wave, when the nationwide sero survey was conducted, what was found that Kerala had detected 1 in every 6 infection which happened in the state, while the national average was 1 in 30 infections. So point is that Kerala has always been detecting more infections or more cases per infection than any other part of the country. And that is true for this wave also. Now, with the revised testing policy, which say that asymptomatic need not to be tested, it is settling down slowly, and then more focus is on those individuals who are symptomatic or other high-risk condition. And that's, and especially when Omicron wave happens in the very quick succession, where quickly rise, majority of people are infected. So both cases are being picked up as well as targeted testing resulting in high test positivity rate. It should not matter that much from policy perspective or neither from citizens perspective. What matters, I would repeat, that we should be comprehensively looking at all 4 parameters: daily COVID-19 cases, daily test positivity rate, hospitalization rate, and ICU rate, and preferably weekly average to take off some of the aberrations in this. And that is how the response should be taken. It is not a cause of concern, at least in Kerala, not in other parts of the country, unless we see rise in the hospitalization or ICU admission.
Okay. In fact, only 3.6%, Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta, are hospitalized in Kerala. That is the statement, in fact, that had come from the health minister. So clearly, you also are of the view that this shouldn't really concern us too much, given the fact that the hospitalization rate has been much, much lower if we compare Kerala to other states as well. It's just like more cases are being detected.
Yes, absolutely. As I've said several times earlier, this is a new elephant in the room, and the rules of this game are quite different from what we have learned in the earlier phase. So both hospitalization is low, as well as the days spent in a hospital per admission has also come down. So there's really nothing to worry about. Of course, monitoring for all the parameters that we are talking of.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Rajiv Dasgupta as well as Dr. Chandrakant Laheria, for your perspective on these two very, very important issues as far as India's fight against COVID pandemic is concerned. Thank you for joining us this evening. Heading into another very, very short break. There's lots lined up for you on the other side as well. Stay with us.